Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityurma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace. So here we are at the end of our journey, and at the beginning again. We have done up to verse number 31, and as I was saying, it covers the bulk of the book. Whatever the book had to give us, it has given. But there is some extra material from 32 to 46, and I'll just summarize that in a couple of minutes. It's pretty simple actually. He's giving us another way of looking at the whole thing. So, he says that we have this experience of the waking state, what we are right now. So call that the waking jiva. The waking jiva is you or I right now. And when we go to sleep and we dream, we exist in our dreams. We have a role in our dreams. We don't even recognize it's a dream. It feels like waking to us. And we are doing all sorts of things which seem weird after getting up, but which seem pretty normal, pretty reasonable when we are doing it in the dream. And events happen. So we are in the dream. We are in the dream, in our own dreams. Call that the dream jiva. Who is the dream jiva? Not a person you dream about. You in your own dream. You in your own dream. If you dream that you are walking on the streets of Delhi or something like that, while you are here safely in Loon Lake. Now, you imagine, you dream that, and you were in your dream also. So that person who was in your dream, you in your dream, is the dream jiva. Jiva, individual. You. And Vedanta tells us we are Brahman actually. So let's call that the real jiva. This is Brahman. Now, the Sanskrit terms I'll just give you so that you can relate it to the book. The book calls this the Pratibhasika Jiva. Pratibhasika, illusion. The book calls this the Vyavaharika Jiva. Vyavaharika Jiva. And the dream calls this the book calls this the Paramarthika Jiva. Paramarthika, absolute. Translation would be absolute jiva or real jiva. Vyavaharika, transactional. Transactional jiva. Transactional, relative, empirical, what we experience ourselves to be. And Pratibhasika, what is recognized after waking up to be an illusion, to be a dream. So the dream jiva. Now he says, these are the three things that we need to keep in mind. And what happens is, think about the experience of waking up from the dream. Every day when we wake up from our dreams, if you remember our dream and remember the dream, sometimes we do not remember the dreams, but sometimes we do. If you compare yourself in the dream and yourself sitting up on the bed after waking up, you will find that jiva was none other than you, under dream or illusion. And when you wake up, that jiva merges back into you. So upon waking up, the dream jiva merges into the waking jiva. And the point of the whole analysis is that upon enlightenment, we, the waking jiva, we merge into the Paramarthika Jiva, the real Jiva, that is Brahman. That will be a similar experience. Not exactly the same, much more powerful. You will awaken into your own reality. As you awaken from a dream state into a waking state, which is your own reality, a greater reality. In the same way, we awaken from the so-called waking state into the really awake state, which Buddha calls being awake. In fact, in the Mandukya Upanishad, Mandukya Karika, Gaudapada, Shankaracharya's teacher's teacher, he says we have only two states, dream and sleep. We say we have three states, right? Waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Sleeping means deep sleep. Of course, dream is also in sleep. And we think we have these three states, deep sleep, dream, and waking. But Gaudapada Acharya, Shankaracharya's teacher says we have only two states, dream and sleep. These two he calls dream. And this he calls sleep. Only two states. Only two states. Dream and sleep. Waking also he calls a dream. And then, is there a real state when you get enlightened? He says, yes, but that's not a state. Reality is not a state. States come and go. Reality is what appears as these states. So when we realize ourselves to be the Turiya, the Brahman, the Paramarthika Jiva, all of them are different terms for the same thing. You, the reality, after enlightenment, then you realize what we call the waking state is also a dream, just like the dreaming state. And sleep is different from them because in sleep we have no experience of any particular thing. In dream we dream about things. Waking we seem to experience with the help of sense organs. But the reality of all of that is Brahman, and we get enlightened, we realize that. The Holy Mother, speaking to, I think, Arupananda Swami in Mayurkatha, it's there. She suddenly says, remember, Ma Sharada, she's saying in the rural setting in Bengal, she's saying to this young monk, even this waking of ours is a dream. And then the monk protests. He says, how can this be a dream? Dreams are impermanent. Every day it comes and it's gone. Next time it's a new dream. But the waking world is there when you wake up. And she doesn't argue. She doesn't give arguments. She just laughs. She laughs and she says in Bengali, Ta holei baba, ta holei baba, shapno boito noy. Let it be so, let it be more permanent, the waking state. It is nothing other than a dream. So, this analysis. Now, one more point is there, one example they have given for this. Waking from dream to the waking state, and from enlightenment from the waking state to Brahman. The example he gives in this book, at the very end of the book, is of foam. It's not a very good example anyway. Foam, wave, and water. In the ocean, the waters are whipped up into a wave. And on the crest of the wave you see foam. All of that is water. When the foam subsides back into the wave, it's a wave. The wave subsides back into water, it's water. And of course, all throughout it was only water. Now the foam is like the dream jiva. It is based on our waking state. When we go to sleep, when we lose awareness of our waking state and go to sleep, from our waking state, we have dreams in our lives. And these dreams are constituted of materials gathered in the waking state. And so, like the foam on the crest of a wave. So when the foam subsides back, it subsides back into the wave itself. Similarly, the dream jiva subsides back into the waking jiva, us. And when the wave goes, it goes into water. And the important thing is, all throughout, here, here and here, it is nothing other than water. The foam doesn't last, the wave lasts a little longer, and the water always lasts. But even when it's in its form, its wave, it's still water. So at this stage also we can recognize the water here, which means Brahman, right now. So that's what's there in the 15 verses, from 32 to 45. This idea, this example. So a new way of thinking about enlightenment. But remember, this is a sort of crude way of putting it. It's not like Brahman becomes a wave and then there's a little Brahman foam on top. It's a way of looking at it. Alright. Should we discuss something before I conclude? Let me make one more point which I forgot to make. The 20th verse, Asti Bhati Priyam. The 5 factors of experience. 5 factors of experience. One is Asti, isness or existence. Bhati, shining or consciousness. Literally translated as shining, but it means consciousness. And then Priyam, joy, bliss, whatever. And then Rupam, form. And then Nama, name, or the label we attach to all our experiences. Form does not only mean what you see, hear, taste, all those are forms. Now, if you remember, I explained this in a particular way. There is no problem with the Asti and the Bhati. There is a slight problem with the Priyam because all experiences are not Priyam. All experiences are not blissful or joyful. Most of them are not. So why is this person claiming that in every experience there is Priyam? That's the struggle to explain that. We know why he's claiming that because Vedanta says it is all Satchidananda. So Ananda must be there. But we do not experience Ananda as Ananda all the time. Now one explanation I gave was yesterday, everything that we experience exists. There is no problem with that. Is, Asti, Asti. Everything exists. That's alright. The next thing is Bhati. And it's true that every experience must be in consciousness. After all, where will you have experience? So consciousness must be there in every experience. Otherwise, you cannot have an experience. Now the Priyam, I said, this unlimited existence and unlimited consciousness is Priyam. That's what I had said. So that's a roundabout sort of a stretch. There is another way of explaining this, which is also somewhat unsatisfactory, but a different way. What it says is, look at the objects of experience. Here I am saying look at the experience itself. They are saying that look at the objects of experience. The table and the chair and all that. Now in all the things that we experience, in all objects, it is true that we experience them as existing. That much is common. If it was not existing, we would not experience it. If it was not existing, we would not experience it. So everything that we experience as existing. But he says, this other second explanation is that we do not experience consciousness in anything except ourselves. Let me repeat that. That might sound like a strange thing to say. Consciousness, awareness, sentience is experienced only in your own mind. Nowhere else. Think about it. What will be the doubt? No, Swami, so many people are saying, are you saying that they are not conscious? Are they zombies? Are they not conscious? There's so many living beings out there, are they not conscious? So I'm experiencing consciousness, but be careful. Are you experiencing their consciousness or their bodies? You are experiencing the bodies. The physical bodies, you are experiencing their behavior, you are experiencing their speech. If you are a telepath, at the most you will experience their thoughts, but not their consciousness. Consciousness never becomes an object of experience. It is always the experiencer. The only place where we experience consciousness is in our own minds, that reflected consciousness, Chidarabhasa. Think about it. Where else do you experience consciousness? Nowhere else. So he says, in all things, in the external world, everywhere, we experience isness. Isness in all things, all objects. Isness. Is plus shines in consciousness. Or consciousness, let's put it as consciousness. Isness plus consciousness. Where do you experience isness and consciousness? Only in the mind. Plus consciousness. Only in your mind. Or you can say only in yourself. Your own consciousness you can experience in yourself. Other people's consciousness, other animals' consciousness you cannot experience. We only infer it. In fact, in philosophy, that's an entire big question of other minds. How do we know that other beings have minds? So that's actually an easier question. How do we know that other beings have consciousness? Where the only consciousness that we have experienced is our own consciousness. Okay. So only in your mind do you experience consciousness. And bliss, priyam, isness plus consciousness plus bliss or joy is only in your sattvic mind.
Sattvic?
Yes.
Mind. When the mind becomes sattvic, enjoying the beauty of Loon Lake or listening to the hymns chanted in front of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother and Swamiji, when the mind becomes sattvic, a kind of pure bliss flows there. That's what is meant by priyam. Now, in this analysis, in this way of looking at it, asti, bhati, priyam are there in all objects, but we experience asti in all objects, asti plus bhati only in the mind, and asti plus bhati and plus priyam only in the sattvic mind. This is another way of looking at it. This is also a compromise, because then you are retreating from the position that asti, bhati and priyam are experienced in every experience. So, but this explains the priyam very nicely. Because after all, where do we experience happiness? Only when the mind is light and pure and, relaxed, enjoying itself, the sattvic state. Gita says, sukha, happiness, it arises only when the mind is sattvic, when the mind is relaxed and pure and alert. He said, no Swami, when a person is having a great time in the partying, he's happy. No, he's excited. Even the excitement will be recognized as happiness only if he relaxes a little bit. Person who's tremendously excited at getting something, some kind of sense pleasure, will not be able to enjoy that sense pleasure unless relaxes and savors it. To savor food, a beautiful sight, anything, any kind of sense pleasure also, the mind has to become quiet for a while. Otherwise no pleasure will come out of it. Only excitement, stimulation and exhaustion. So any kind of enjoyment, worldly enjoyment also, requires relaxation. To savor it. So this is an alternative explanation. An alternative way of looking at asti, bhati, priyam. So in general, are there any comments, questions before I wrap up? Yes.
I just don't see the separation between asti and bhati. It's only known through consciousness. Existence is only known when you are conscious.
Yes, but in this explanation you can see the separation. If you look at the objects you're conscious of, not your experience, you look at it more like a scientist would look at it. Where do you see existence? in all existing objects. Where do you find consciousness? Only in yourself. In fact, a scientist would say only in living beings, not in all existing objects. And Vedantin would say be a little more rational and careful scientist.
So the asti is an assumption known in through bhati.
No, it says that the bhati is not known in all experiences. The bhati is known only in the experience of your own mind, of your internal states.
But since that's all we know, the asti is an assumption we're making in and through our body.
Yes, but it's not an assumption. It's directly experienced. What you are saying is, all that we ever experience, we are a couple of steps ahead. All that we ever experience is bhati asti. Bhati means shining, asti means existence. All that we ever experience in life is a shining existence. Think about it, with names and forms. What are you? My own existence. It shines forth and it is. And after that it is Sarvapriyananda, it's a man, it's a monk, it's in Loon Lake. All that comes later, all that's changing. But the basic unchanging fact is, it is and it reveals itself, shines forth. Everything in the universe you experience is and shines forth. What it is, how it is, and everything else is name and form, is within the realm of man. What you are saying is existence and consciousness are not separable in the sense you understand it. Yes, that's true. Advaita Vedanta says that. Brahman is nothing but existence consciousness. In fact, Taittiriya Upanishad definition of Brahman, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Infinite existence and consciousness is Brahman. All the existences and consciousness we see are limited, cut off. Here is a man, here is a woman, here is a tree, here is a building. These are existences and consciousnesses all limited by names and forms. Remove the names and forms, it's an ocean of existence and consciousness. Yes.
Somewhat relating to what you're saying, it comes into a question more related to what you previously said, and it's got to do with the term reflected consciousness and a distinction or possible distinction, because in usage, consciousness and awareness are used almost interchangeably. There is a difference I see, and check me if I'm wrong if I go through this. Reflected consciousness is more like awareness, whereas consciousness is something else than awareness.
Yes, you're right.
Distinction.
You're right. I understand the way you're using the words, but these are English words, and they are not precise. You can use them this way or that way. Whereas the Sanskrit words have been designed for these particular usages. You see, I heard that the Eskimos have more than 20 words or 25 words for snow, ice, and variations of that, which we cannot express in English. In the same way, Sanskrit has a range of terms which can cover precisely. When you mean Chaitanyam, it means pure consciousness, or Shuddha Chaitanyam, pure consciousness. It's a term used very precisely for that. Chidabhasa, reflected consciousness. That's the perfect term to use. Or shadow of consciousness. So in English we can say pure consciousness and awareness with the proviso that it can be switched. Nisargadatta. Nisargadatta, if you have heard Nisargadatta in that book, many people read that, I am that. I am that, I think is the name of the book. There you will find, he says, consciousness comes and goes. In reality it is awareness. So what he is doing there is, it's a translation from Marathi into English. So he said some word in Marathi, which the translator translated. So there he is using awareness for what I mean, what I'm saying consciousness here. And using consciousness for what you're calling awareness.
Or this in reverse.
Yeah. So don't go by the words themselves. Try to catch the underlying meaning and then it's all right.
For the word love, there are about 12 words in Sanskrit.
Many kinds
love
of words.
between friends, love between mother and child, love between, there are different words.
Right.
See, I was ready to think of awareness as low-grade consciousness.
Yes, you're right. But don't get caught up in the words.
No, that's-
What you call low-grade consciousness Somebody else can call that consciousness, and what you are calling consciousness, somebody can call that awareness. It can be reversed. Not semantics. It's the way you use words. Wittgenstein, the great German philosopher, he used to, in Cambridge, when he taught in Cambridge, he would come and, those of you who are not up on your philosophy, Western philosophy, Wittgenstein was probably the greatest philosopher of the 20th century. Probably.
Who?
Wittgenstein.
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 Yeah.
German, but he spent most of his time in England.
Yeah.
Brilliant person.
Yeah.
Incredible person. And the shades of Vedanta. You see, he only wrote one book in his time, and another book was published just after his death from notes. The only book he ever wrote was Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. A little book. Tiny little book. And it's all 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.32, 2.12, like that. Just single sentences. It's very difficult to make sense of. And the introduction is also equally eccentric. He says, this book will make sense only to those who have understood what I want to say. To others, it will not make, it will be of no use, it will not make sense. And then he says, I don't care. True philosopher, Ludwig Wittgenstein. He was a son of a...
You get a little book, the primer,
Wittgenstein primer.
Oh, yeah.
He was a son of one of the richest families in Austria before Second World War. And he gave all his money away. He just lived very simply. And he wrote this book. You know, he wanted to become an engineer, aeronautical engineer. At that time, aeroplanes were the first thing. So he went into engineering, then from engineering he became interested in mathematics. So he decided to become a mathematician. But from studying mathematics, he became interested in logic. Then he asked, who is the greatest mathematical logician living? Somebody said in England, his name is Bertrand Russell. Principia Mathematica, he was working with Whitehead. So Wittgenstein went to meet Russell, and Russell describes that this mad-looking German young man came up to me and said, I can't decide whether to be an engineer or a philosopher of mathematics. A philosopher. And Russell said, you write something and show it to me, I'll tell you. And he wrote something, the next day he came and presented it to Russell. And Russell looked at it, and the first thing he said was, you must not become an engineer. Very soon that young man, who was accepted as a disciple by the great, most well-known and probably the greatest living philosopher at that time, Bertrand Russell, very soon he became the teacher, and Russell was content to be his disciple. Extremely intense. Russell writes in his diary that this man would come, he's become a torment for me. He will come agitated with the new, latest fresh idea, and he has to express it to me. He will pace back and forth for 3 hours talking, and I'm afraid to turn him away because he threatens to commit suicide. So, like that. And finally, Bertrand Russell said, there's a point to all of this, I'm coming to it. But Bertrand Russell said that you should come and teach here in Cambridge. He said, all right. And then you have to do a PhD. You need a PhD to teach here. And Wittgenstein said, I can't be bothered to do a PhD. So Bertrand Russell said, that little book you have written, Logico Tractatus Philosophicus, that you just submit that as your thesis. And I'm there, I'll get it fast. And you will be amazing PhD interview, thesis defense. The examiners, look at the examiners, Bertrand Russell and G.E. Moore, who was Russell's senior colleague. They were the two greatest living philosophers in the English philosophy scene at that time. They are the examiners. Wittgenstein is an unknown young man who has not studied philosophy as a subject ever. He's sitting there, they're gossiping for some time, and Moore says to Bertrand Russell, Bertie, don't you think we should ask some questions? All right, opened the book at some random page, asked a question. Wittgenstein tried to explain, They could not, and they could not agree, and there was a big debate, a quarrel. And suddenly Wittgenstein stood up, patted both of them on their backs and said, "Give it up, boys, you will never understand it." And he walked out. And they gave him the PhD. Now, I'm giving the story to give 2 points, to make 2 points. One is, at the beginning of that book, not beginning, I think statement number 5.5 or 5.6, Wittgenstein says, the limits of language are the limits of the world. And at the end of the book he says, what cannot be expressed in language must be passed over in silence.
That's right.
Just, he leaves it at that.
Is that the introduction here?
No, this is the book itself. Last line of the book is,
No, the introduction to with Wittgenstein, not Tractatus.
this is Tractatus.
This is a Tractatus?
Tractatus, yes. Tractatus 5.5 or 5.6,
Yeah,
that's
I
one.
couldn't understand it.
The limits of language, the limits of my word are limits of language, or limits of language are limits of my word. That means whatever you can describe with language is worldly, is in the world. Whatever is a fact in the world can be described in language. Now, a positivist would say, alright, but then what cannot be described in language does not exist. Wittgenstein says, there is something which does exist, which cannot be expressed in language, and we must pass over it in silence.
Isn't that transcendental, basically?
Probably, he doesn't say that. Not only that, he says, another very interesting statement he makes, when all the great problems, questions of science will have been answered, nothing of worth will have been said. No important problem of human life will have been solved, he
Is
says.
it former statement?
When all the great questions of science have been answered, none of the problems of human life will have been solved.
Yes, but the question before that, the statement that you made before that. The sentence before that, just that
About
statement.
silence.
Must be passed over in silence.
What cannot be expressed.
What cannot be expressed in language must be passed over in silence. So that's one statement I wanted to make. The other statement is related to what you are using. Consciousness and awareness, these words.
Yeah.
The semantic problem.
Yeah.
That's why this whole story came. Now Wittgenstein would teach, not from a textbook. He would stand and do philosophy. He would think and speak. So all the students, the description is like they would be holding their breaths, because what is coming out now is new. It's nowhere there in any textbook of philosophy. Philosophy is being created as he speaks. So he would walk back and forth, and all these people would sit with their notebooks and take down notes. And many of them became some of the greatest philosophers in the next generation. Now, one day, one of the students was saying that, "Professor, this is what you said in the last class." And Wittgenstein said, "No, I didn't say this." And the student was pretty sure that's exactly what the professor had said. So that day he wrote down the exact words, what Wittgenstein said. Next day he said, "Sir, you said in the last class, you said this." And Wittgenstein said, "No, I did not say that." And he said, "No, I've written it down exactly as you said. You said this." And Wittgenstein said, "Oh, but those are my words. You don't understand what I mean by those words. You are using the same words, but we don't mean the same thing. I can see that you do not understand that." Very interesting.
Did he denounce the Tractatus at the very end and say that it really didn't answer much?
Now, when he wrote the Tractatus, he said, "All the problems of philosophy have been solved. I give up philosophy." And he went away to become a school teacher. And he taught mathematics to children in a village, I think in Switzerland and Austria. And then he realized that all that he had done in the Tractatus was wrong. So he came back again to Cambridge, and he worked on a new book which finally became the Philosophical Investigations. So he's probably the only philosopher who wrote 2 philosophical classics in his lifetime, both opposite, completely opposite, repudiating the earlier work, Tractatus and Philosophical Investigations. Anyway, so language, one has to be careful. Don't worry about the words. See that you have got the concept right, and then use words to express it. Yes.
Maharaj, without the ability to pass over in silence, and without the gift of brevity, may I ask?
Yes. Please go on.
And this is only for me, Maharaj,
Yes.
from my perspective, for me. So, your concluding remarks, when you said concluding remarks, the heart became very heavy. Because you opened for us, I'm sure for all, the window perhaps through reflected consciousness. You shed great light for us on concepts that were yet unfamiliar to me. So before taking refuge in the path of bhakti again, which is almost like the default path, and if I should wish to open the door to the room that you opened, that like the magnificent analogy that you gave about the mirror, or that any reflecting surface of the light of the sun, consciousness lighting up that room will now maybe become dark to some degree, but if I were to open that room again, please give me a permanent flashlight. What is that flashlight that will show the way forward when you're not there?
Permanent flashlight is always within us, and it's permanently switched on. We read in verse number 5, no udeti nastameti. You see, verse number 5. No udeti nastameti esha, na vriddhim yati nakshayam. Literally means, it is not switched on, it is not switched off. No udeti does not rise, does not set. It is a sun which neither rises nor sets. Nor is it light ever dimmed. Na vriddhim yati nakshayam. Neither does it increase in brightness, nor does it ever diminish in brightness. Swayam vibhati. It shines itself. Athanyani bhasayet. And reveals everything else. All you have to do to note that flashlight is, whatever experience I am having at any moment of my life, how am I having that experience? What enables me to have that experience? What I am experiencing is the seeing. My sense organs are the seer. My sense organs become the seeing. My mind is the seer. My mind becomes the seeing. I, the unobjectifiable subject, pure subject, I am always the seer. That is the flashlight. That flashlight is Brahman.
You got it?
Alright, let us just sum up the takeaway from this whole thing. The first verse and the 20th verse. So please come to the first verse again. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. Rupam drishyam lochanam drik. Tadrishyam driktu manasam. Tadrishyam driktu manasam. Drishyadhivrittaya sakshi. Drishyadhivrittaya sakshi. Drigeva natu drishyate. Drigeva natu drishyate. Remember the 4 stages. Stage 1, the world is the seen, the object. The eyes are the seer. And the 3 principles, seer and seen are different. The seer is one, the seen are many. The seer is unchanging, the seen are changing. And apply it to the eyes and the world. Then go to the second stage. The eyes, all the sense organs, the body becomes the seen. Seen means known, experienced object. And the mind is the experiencer. You, the inner being, the mind, you experience the body and the sense organs. And you are the seer, and the body is the seen. Again, the 3 principles. And then you go to the 3rd stage. You have to, as a practice, the 3rd stage is the important stage, where I am the witness of the mind. Don't start with the 3rd stage, start with the 1st stage. Take a few seconds in the 1st stage, a few seconds in the 2nd stage, and then come to the 3rd stage. Try to see that I am the witness of the mind. It will start as imagination, will be converted into understanding, and that will be converted into realization. Imagine that you are the witness of the mind. If you get it, how you are the witness of the mind, you don't have to imagine. That's one step down. But if I don't get it, how am I the witness of the mind? I seem to be the mind. Then let me imagine I am the witness of the mind. Repeat that imagination until it becomes understanding, until it dawns on me. Yes, of course I am the witness of the mind. Sometimes I get identified with the mind. But even then, I am the witness of the mind. I am the light shining upon the mind. And that light never becomes an object. Even though it does not become an object of knowledge, even though we cannot know it as an object, it's not that it does not exist. It's not nothing. Remember? It's not a thing, an object. But it's not nothing either. It's no thing. It's no thing. It's the basis of all things. How do you say it's the basis of all things? Because 20th verse, Asti Bhati Priyam. It's the existence of all things. Now come to verse number 20. Another beautiful verse. Verse number 1 is about what's within you. Verse number 1 is about what is within us, the Atman. Also outside us. But because we make this division between subject and object all our lives, so the book also follows that division. If it says it's one Brahman all throughout, sounds nice, but we can't grasp it. But if you break it up into subject and object, find Brahman within yourself. And then find Brahman everywhere outside. It's easier, two-step process. But it's the same Brahman. First, what is within you? There's a beautiful saying. Whatever lies behind you and whatever yet lies in front of you is as nothing compared to what lies within you. Whatever lies behind you, your entire life, happy and unhappy, success and failure, all the events of our lives. And whatever may lie in front, we don't know. In the next few years left to us. Our attentions are fixed on this. Vedanta tells us it is as nothing compared to what lies within you right now. What is behind you, what yet lies in front of you is as nothing compared to what is within you. So I said this in Santa Barbara, one talk, and next day, a devotee had left a card in Santa Barbara saying that what lies behind you and what lies in front of you is as nothing compared to what lies within you and ... and in the freezer. So we went to the freezer and saw that she had put some nice ice cream in the freezer as a sign of her. Like she liked the talk, so she put that. And the card was so nice, printed with the exact same quotation. And she had added, and what lies in the freezer. So. But whatever we experience in life is also God. As Swami Vivekananda said, never approach anything except as God. No person, no event, no place. 20th verse. Asti bhati priyam rupam, asti bhati priyam rupam, namam chetyam shapanchakam, namam chetyam shapanchakam, adyatrayam brahma rupam, adyatrayam brahma rupam, jagat rupam tatodvayam. Jagat Rupam Tatodvayam. All our experiences, all our lives, these 5 things are there. Asti Bhati Priyam, existence, consciousness, bliss, name and form, Nama Rupa. Now our lives, we have always paid attention to the Nama Rupa. Pleasant Nama Rupa, we chase it. If we get it, we try to hold on to it. Unpleasant Nama Rupa, we avoid it. If we get it, we try to get rid of it. But in all of them, pleasant and unpleasant, desirable and undesirable Nama Rupa, all throughout, the reality is always Asti Bhati Priyam. Vedanta says, shift your attention. Make a habit of shifting your attention. Bhakti says, try to see God in everything. Vedanta says, try to see the unlimited existence consciousness bliss, which is you, in everything. Asti Bhakti Priya. Two stories actually I wanted to tell. Do we have time?
Yes.
Oh, Dr. Bhatt. One was, you see, the completeness comes when you recognize the entire world as yourself. The story I've told, some of you may have heard it on the internet. It's a beautiful story. The story of the princess of Kashi. Kashi Desh ki Rajkumari. In the Himalayas, the monks tell this story. You see, there was a kingdom, not Kashi, some other kingdom, and there was in the court of the king, a play was organized. Entertainment. They didn't have TV in those days, TV shows, CDs. So a play was organized. And in the play, one of the characters was the princess of Kashi. Kashi is the holy city of India. So the princess of Kashi. And the princess was supposed to be a little girl. Now who would play that role? The prince of that kingdom, the son of the king and the queen, he was about the same right age, 5 years, and a very cute little boy. So the queen said, dress him up as a girl and he can play the role. So they dressed him up as a girl and he played the role. And he looked so cute, the queen said, today they would have taken a picture, or a selfie or something like that. They said, ask the court painter to paint a portrait. And they painted a portrait of the prince in that dress. Years passed. 15 years later, the prince was a young man now, and getting ready to take charge of the kingdom and everything. The king and queen were old. And the prince one day, wandering through the huge palace, went into a storeroom underground, rummaging through whatever was stored there, came across this old painting. And he swept the dust off and he saw this little girl in the painting, and it's written, Princess of Kashi, dated so and so. He thought, she must be my age now. And he fell in love with her. Now, he was too shy to say this to his mother or father, the king or the queen, but he moped. He didn't go to his studies and his classes, and he didn't do his duties. The queen was worried, your father was annoyed, the king was annoyed, but they couldn't make out what was wrong with the young man. He wouldn't say anything, he just sat quietly. And then the wise minister took him aside and said, Prince, what ails you? Tell me. You can tell me in confidence, open your heart to me. And the prince mumbled, well, I have fallen in love with this girl and I must marry her, otherwise I'll never be happy in life. And the minister said, that's all right, very good, we'll arrange it. Who is this girl? The princess of Kashi. Oh, the princess of Kashi. Well, where did you meet her? Well, actually, I haven't met her, but you haven't met her? I've seen her picture. Okay, that's all right. Where did you see the picture? Well, it's an old picture when she was a little girl, and it's there in our storeroom. Now the minister thought, well, let's take me there and show me the picture. He took the minister down there and showed the picture. The minister looked at the picture and said, oh, Prince, you need to sit down. And he said to the prince, this is not any princess of Kashi. There was a drama performed in our court, and this was the person who played that role of the princess of Kashi. The prince says, all right, but whoever this girl is, I want to marry her. And the minister said, oh prince, you were a little boy at that time, we dressed you up as this little girl. That thou art. Tattvamasi. The moment he realized that, now the interesting thing happens. What happens is, for his desire for the princess of Kashi, the desire goes away. Why does the desire go away? Because he's frustrated, he can never marry her, that's why the desire goes away. No. Because he has married her, that's why the desire goes away. No. It's because he realizes, I am that. There is no princess of Kashi apart from me. Yeah. The world is our princess of Kashi. The name and form out there projected by Maya, we give it existence and life. And then Swami Vivekananda says, when we either run after it or run away from it. They are nothing in themselves. You are that. This whole world is you yourself. through this Asti Bhati Priyam, you will realize, I alone am appearing in the form of this world. All the people and all the things and all the events of my life. Then you feel a deep unity with everything. Also, all selfish desires go away. That I want to pull all the good things of the life into this physical body, little body. No, that will seem ridiculous. I am the ocean. I am one with everything. So that's one story. The next story shows us what will happen if you realize this. This is from Yoga Vasishta, the second story. The story of, I think, the Queen Chural, probably. Look it up. That book which that Swami was, that monk in the Himalayas was translating and throwing into the river, the Yoga Vasishta, the story is there. There was this kingdom, and the king and the queen was a very wise queen indeed. After some time, years passed, the king admired the wisdom and the calmness and the serenity of the queen, and he asked her, what's the secret? And the queen said, there is something called the Atman, beyond the body and mind. If you realize that, all problems are at the level of the body or the mind. You are immortal, unchanging consciousness bliss. Oh, show me how to realize that. And the queen taught him yoga and Vedanta, and the king took a vacation, gave charge of the kingdom to the queen and said, let me go and realize this. So he went away to one of his remote palaces and sat there and he meditated and studied and thought, and as days passed into weeks, weeks into months, months into years, he realized, I am Brahman. And he was always sunk in samadhi, in the bliss of the self. World is an appearance. Let the queen run the kingdom. What is it to me? It's an appearance. He's sunk in samadhi. Narendranath, after experiencing Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Sri Ramakrishna said, what do you want now? First you wanted Nirvikalpa Samadhi, you've got it. Now what do you want? He said, I don't want anything. I just want to remain in this state. Once in a while I'll come down and grab a quick snack and then go back into Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Luckily, Ramakrishna scolded him. Because of that, we are here today. Now, the queen didn't scold the king. The king remained like that. But after a few weeks and months, he thought, the queen has the same realization. But she doesn't do what I'm doing. She's busy with her worldly duties, the palace and the first lady, busy with her work. So he goes to her and asks her, my dear, you have got this realization long ago. Amazing. And it's so wonderful, I'm in bliss. But tell me, why are you not doing what I'm doing? Remaining in samadhi. You can do it, I know. The queen said, there is yet something more. What? Something more than this? Yes. That which you find within yourself is exactly what I find everywhere in the universe. In every little action which you consider to be a worldly action, I see everything as Brahman. And the king said, you teach me that. That's the next thing. And so the king and the queen became the most enlightened rulers that they ever were, and so on. The story ended happily. Everybody lived happily ever after, because they were enlightened. It's like an Indian fairy tale, so everybody has to become enlightened. And the story goes on. The king then invited his trusted ministers and taught them this, and the ministers became enlightened. And the minister taught their family members, and they became enlightened. They taught others, and finally everyone in the kingdom became enlightened. It's a story. And then what happened? The story prints in a very quaint, in a very nice tone. It says, and in that strange kingdom, everybody went about their duties. There was peace and prosperity. And what they did was, as they would pass by each other in the house and in the marketplace, they would look at each other and smile a little smile. And go by their duties, waiting for their prarabdha karma to be exhausted. I guess all were enlightened, and so that was the end of the kingdom also. Anyway, that's the story. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.